Excuse me.
I'm sorry. I was just...
Whoa! Put her back in. She's not done yet.
Remakes have been becoming less and less appealing as each new one gets announced, because it seems like all roads lead to the modern day audience. Not all remakes are created equal or with the right intentions in mind. In many cases, as we've seen over the last few years, a lot of remakes are made to easily rake in cash from consumers high off of nostalgia and to update said game for modern sensibilities. Yes, there are remakes that turn out very well and can arguably rival the original. However, a lot of this depends on the developers and what their motivations are for making a remake of a beloved title. What was carefully crafted years ago can and has been patched together like some Frankenstein experiment. This is not solely due to new developers at the helm, but we see this mishandling of remakes from developers from the original games. This is due to some developers wanting to chase the modern day audience that resides in Clown World, which is also home to game journalists that deep down detest games from the past and any gamer not ashamed of what gaming once was. Speaking of which, ashamed is a great word to describe how a lot of developers feel about their past games, which is why they feel the need to create remakes. The idea that there's individuals and studios that somehow develop embarrassment for games that they were heavily involved with just shows how out of touch and indoctrinated they truly are. But when we see how certain aspects of remakes get reimagined, it puts in perspective what developers mean when they say things like bringing a beloved classic up to date. Now there's a few examples of remakes that were not needed, mishandled, and modernized in all the wrong ways. This is not to say none of the games that will be mentioned have no positive aspects to them. And to be clear, I won't be pointing out the positives because that's not the point of this video. And if you need validation for any of the remakes you've played, then there's plenty of videos out there that do nothing but simp religiously for modern day remakes. Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth are perfect examples of how not to handle a remake. First, Square Enix chopped what was originally one full game into 3 separate full-price games with deluxe editions and collector's editions. But to make matters worse, Square Enix turned the FF7 remakes into Kingdom Hearts fanfiction. Thanks, Nomura. No one asked for alternate timelines, multiverses, the mentors from Harry Potter, changing placement of boss fights and character introductions, or having a remake divided into 3 games. But since Square Enix insisted on going in this fucked up direction, now conveniently the Square Enix apologists are excited for where things go and always wanted an FF7 remake to be handled this way. Moving on to the Dead Space remake. A remake, by the way, that underperformed so badly that plans for a Dead Space 2 remake were shelved. And you may ask why it was quickly forgotten about shortly after its 2023 release. After all, 2023 was one of the best years in gaming according to many modern gaming white knights, so why did this remake fall short? I wouldn't point the finger at one thing, rather I believe a few factors played a role, such as it being priced at $70, it was a remake of a game that did not need one, people really wanted a Dead Space 4, the developers creating the remake did nothing prior to instill confidence in many, throw in the fact it's EA, a company that continues to increase in notoriety, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention the elephant in the room, that being the modern day propaganda. Seeing how the original Dead Space kept Isaac's identity a secret until the end, and kept his voice a mystery and didn't purposely make Nicole look like Isaac's grandmother. They also gave Kendra feminine features and weren't concerned with identity politics. Whereas the remake couldn't help itself but add all gender restrooms, race swap characters on posters, and include toggled trigger warnings, all suited for the modern day audience. if only enough of them bought the game. Before I get to the last example, a quick dishonorable mention to Resident Evil 4 Remake, another unnecessary remake, and it's of an overrated game that felt more like a side game rather than a mainline title. This remake was given the modern day treatment. Luis was forbidden to mention Ashley's ballistics or act like a playboy. Ashley couldn't be seen flirting with Leon. She had to be a strong woman. This is proven by Leon's dialogue at the end of RE4 Remake. No looking up Ashley's skirt, nor was Leon able to be politically incorrect. Same goes for Ada. Gone was her seductive personality, replaced with a stoic personality, accompanied by a voice actress so dull you would think she was related to Young Yeah. Well, maybe they are, seeing how both of them have a victim mentality. Now to Silent Hill 2 Remake. The recent example of developers not understanding what made the original game so great. The devs being Bloober Team, who up until this point have made walking simulators, a team of individuals that claim to love Silent Hill 2, but judging by what's been shown off so far, Bloober Team's love for Silent Hill 2 may be an exaggeration. When things like attention to detail and overall quality is a mixed bag from a game priced at $70 and releases in a few months, not to mention after the announcement trailer back in October of 2022, Konami and Bloober Team provided no additional information or footage until January of 2024. It's safe to say not everyone is confident this remake will be carefully crafted with the intention to honor the original Silent Hill 2. Of course, it wouldn't be a modern day remake if the characters didn't receive unflattering makeovers. While James's face did get a slight upgrade compared to what he originally looked like in the 2022 reveal trailer, other characters such as Angela and Maria got the modern day treatment. Femininity is forbidden in modern games. Not much of a shock at this point, just look at the upcoming reboots of Fable and Perfect Dark. It doesn't matter if it's a new IP, a sequel, reboot, or remake. Female characters are not safe from the obvious agenda that's been plaguing the games industry. The defeminization of female characters go beyond Angela and Maria. Bloober Team westernized some of the enemies in the game, specifically with the nurses. It seems like the nurses have been nerfed compared to their original designs, but clearly Angela and Maria have been taking testosterone this time around. Just hope they leave enough for Mary Jane in Spider-Man 3 and Jean Grey in Wolverine. If that wasn't bad enough, Bloober Team are working with a consulting firm by the name Hit Detection, which is similar to Sweet Baby Inc. They worked with Remedy and Sega recently. Also, Hit Detection have people who used to work for IGN, GameSpot, EA, Blizzard, Riot Games, Polygon, The Verge, and Eurogamer, just to name a few. But on top of that, some of the employees from Hit Detection have gone on to work for Xbox, PlayStation, EA, Tencent, and Larian Studios. People will and have defended decisions from studios that implement propaganda usually found among far left woke Western studios and indoctrinated Eastern studios, citing things like realism as the reason why, and anything other than that will be a conspiracy theory, as if this blatant propaganda hasn't been running rampant in games for several years now. All of this is why modern remakes are doing more harm than good. Sure, the visual fidelity is better, but what good is high tech if the atmosphere and character designs miss the mark? Remakes now are being greenlit by corporal stooges and activist developers more interested in cramming their ideologies instead of creating a faithful remake. It's either that, or studios try to subvert the audience by implementing borderline fan fiction that convolutes the plot and does a disservice to the original game. Not to mention developers that find aspects of their original game embarrassing, which further proves how indoctrinated certain developers are. Nowadays, most remakes are not made with the right intentions. Obviously, companies want money, but they are willing to sell people incomplete games with plot contrivances and modern-day far-left ideological slop that makes the original game in question age like fine wine. Whichever side of the coin it lands on, studios are losing sight of what makes a good remake, and which games could really benefit from them. But with so many studios showing their unwillingness to reject ESG, DEI, consulting firms, and activists posing as developers, the likelihood of a remake without any woke bullshit or subversive nonsense seems like a pipe dream, which in that case, I'll stick with the originals.
This town, there's something wrong with it?
Is it dangerous?
Oh, terrible, just terrible. You know, they seem to get worse every year.